Hello, good afternoon. Dr. Carl here for the class on gender and modernism in Europe, 1848 to 1920. We're in the middle of our second week of the course. We're still thinking about the proletariat, but we've shifted from male examples from last week. For instance, Courbet's peasants, the brutes, the criminals that we saw with Victor Hugo, to female examples of the proletariat. And in particular, I think you remember yesterday we were reading through the first of our texts by Charles Baudelaire in his book, The Painter of Modern Life. And his chapter in particular on women and girls. And if you remember, he laid out it's about basically a page and a half of what kind of woman he thought modern painters should be painting, and what kind of attributes or characteristics they should have, what they should look like, what they should be wearing. And you probably also remember that there was a lot of language in there that was that struck a dual tone that was a little bit contradictory. It was both very misogynistic, and yet he was kind of championing these misogynistic qualities. I think one of the words that one of the students used was dehumanizing. The women that he favored were compared with animals. There was a lot of emphasis on their clothes and on the emptiness of their stare. He speculated even on what they might be thinking. Almost sounded like he was discarding them, saying that their lives didn't have value. And that was kind of part of the essence of that writing, and the essence and the zeitgeist, or the spirit of the times, is that there was a new interest in prostitutes, in women of the night, in, I think I used the word femmes fatale, lady killers, dangerous women, seductive women, dangerously seductive women, and yet the way that they were talked about was in a very condescending and demoralizing way. If you haven't read that, the text, I know it's very difficult, and there are a lot of new words and strange phrases, but I encourage you to read it, because I'm sure we will come back to it, and it's really a sort of essential text for understanding this period in history and kind of appreciating why all of a sudden the subjects in paintings looked quite different. Again, quite different from, there's a departure from those pretty frilly upper-class noble women with their elaborate dresses and fancy hats and so on. And a really, I guess another thing, just as an aside, that I want to sort of add to this conversation about these women, is that around this time, Jack the Ripper was on the loose in London, and he sort of represents the far, far end of the spectrum in terms of how prostitutes were treated in society in Europe. Now, Jack the Ripper was, of course, in England, but there was and I read, I guess I should also say that this new interest in these women, were working women, as they were known, didn't just come out of nowhere and didn't just come out of Baudelaire's writings. There were, in fact, more of them. There were all kinds of reasons why there was a influx of immigration into England, into France, into many European countries from all over the world, really, from Russia, from Asia, all over the place. People were moving to the big cities in search of their fortune, and when they didn't find them, they took to the streets and sold the only thing that they had, which was their bodies. So there were definitely newer areas of the big city, the great cities, that were now becoming well known as hubs for prostitution, and like I said, the whole kind of phenomenon of Jack the Ripper, who nobody really knows who he is, or whether it was just one man acting, or whether there were subsequent, I gather that he had there were an initial 5 victims that were all prostitutes, young women. They were violently attacked, really not just killed in simple ways, but in quite grotesque ways. I'm sure there are places on the internet that you can read in greater detail. Anyways, he is thought to have inspired subsequent copycat murderers. So there were sort of a string of victims that happened over the course of many years, and this kind of fed into the whole phenomenon of vilifying prostitutes, and yet a fascination for their life, their inner lives, the squalid conditions that they were living in, and so on. Now, I'm jumping back to France now, just to say that one of the people that also took an interest in this subject was a painter, a French painter that we're now going to look at, called Eduard Manet. It's not Monet with an O, it's Manet with an A, M-A-N-E-T. And he was a painter in Paris and probably read Baudelaire's essay. In general, he had an interest in realism. He was aware of Courbet's paintings, and was interested in painting these subjects that reflected more of a reality than upholding and showcasing the upper classes. Even though he himself was from the upper class, he was from quite a well-to-do family, but he believed in the value of depicting everyday people. And so the work that we're going to focus on is one of his paintings from 1863 called Olympia. There's an image of it on your course link under this week. I think it's called Femmes Fatale in Painting, something like that. And it's a large painting. Luckily, unlike the Stonebreakers, this one still exists. I believe it's in I want to say the Musée d'Orsay. I could be wrong. But it's another work that caused quite a bit of consternation among audiences at the time. It was exhibited publicly, and the vast majority of people absolutely hated it. They were offended. As I've said before, if you kind of transplanted that scandal into today's situation, there would easily be it would get canceled. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about why that is, and what the reasons were for the offense, and why people were so upset about it. As you can see, it depicts a young to middle-aged woman who's reclining on in her bed. There's another woman standing behind her, which I'll talk about in a second. But the title that has been given to this painting is Olympia, which immediately kind of gives it a bit of a classical feel. And in fact, art historians have noticed or have speculated that he's kind of making a little bit of a joke on other paintings of women who are kind of like courtesans. You know, they're in the service of the court. They're paid to service the king or his courtiers. And, you know, there's a painting by Titian called The Venus of Urbino, who looks very similar, reclines in a similar way. Perhaps she's a little bit more sumptuous. She's more voluptuous. She looks a little bit happier than Olympia here. But in any case, that's the kind of like the genre that or the tradition that Manet is trying to situate his subject in. But obviously there are a few differences between Manet's Olympia and Titian. Titian is a Renaissance painter, by the way, a little bit after Leonardo da Vinci. So he's trying to break away. He's kind of playing with the connection and breaking away from it at the same time. And so some of the similarities, obviously, we have a reclining woman. She's sitting back. She's at ease, and she's naked. So that suggests to us pretty clearly what her profession is, or her occupation. I don't know if you call it a profession, but it's an occupation. And I can say also that the person, the friend of Manet's that modeled for this painting is a woman called Victorine Murant. We're going to have a presentation on Friday, student presentation on this woman, because she was actually the painter's muse. There's a new word for us, M-U-S-E. Maybe we'll talk a bit about what exactly a muse is. She's kind of like a female inspiration as well as a model, but I'll leave all that for our student to expand on. In any case, the subject here, we'll call her Olympia. She's naked. She's pretty relaxed with herself. She's, you know, you might say she's just chilling. She's leaning back on her arm. Her other hand is, you know, maintaining her modesty a little bit ironic because, you know, the rest of her is completely naked. And in fact, that was seen as a little bit ironic at the time. Anyway, probably the most noticeable thing about this painting is her gaze. It's G-A-Z-E, her gaze. That means the way she's looking at us, the expression on her face. The fact that she is looking directly into our eyes. And I'm saying that as I look directly into the camera of the laptop, which is a little bit different, but you get the idea that that's what a gaze is, and it's a very powerful part of a painting, and particularly when we're looking at portraits or paintings of other people, it's a really crucial thing. Are they looking directly at us? Are they looking away? Are they completely hidden, like Courbet's Stonebreakers? And so she is looking directly at us, and it's quite. If you think about the fact that she's naked, and that she's a prostitute, her expression is a little bit surprising. And in particular, it was surprising 100 years ago or 150 years ago, because I think that audiences expected for her to be a little bit embarrassed. She's naked after all. She's, you know, she's not doing the most elevated of jobs. I think people thought she should be covering her eyes, looking away in embarrassment. And instead, Manet has painted her looking directly at us, as if to say that she is not ashamed of what she's doing, that maybe she's, I don't know if I would say she's proud of it, but what I would say, or what people would say now, is that she's owning it. She's kind of saying, this is who I am. This is what I do. What are you going to say about it? And that was one of the reasons, one of a few reasons, that audiences were a little bit uncomfortable with the painting and with her. They didn't like the fact that she was so confrontational. So that was a really kind of novel and almost want to say revolutionary aspect to the painting, is her deadpan expression and her direct gaze to the viewer, her unabashedness. She's not bashful. She's owning who she is and what she is. And, even I want to say for women in general, that's kind of a radical thing. There's a spirit of self-consciousness in Olympia's face. There's a spirit of independence. That's almost I almost want to say inspirational for some women. Like I said, she's not ashamed. Another aspect to the painting that was a little bit unusual were some of the trinkets that are dotted around her body that do not signal her as a woman that's living in poverty. In fact, she seems to be doing all right, just fine. If you look at the painting, she has a really nice gold bangle on her arm. She has a, what do you call that, a choker with a pearl on her neck. She has a pretty little set of mules on her feet, or slippers, silk slippers. She has a nice silk blanket, maybe or shawl. Is it a silk? Yeah, it's like embroidered, it looks like, underneath her. And a beautiful floral decoration in her hair. These are not things that poor women own. These pieces of fine jewelry, pieces of articles of refinement. These are sort of indications of almost a middle-class lifestyle or upper-class lifestyle. They're objects of luxury. And that was also something that didn't sit well with audiences. I think people preferred to see a woman of the night, a woman, I'm going to have it, sorry. A woman from this profession, languishing in poverty, struggling, begging. That was a much more preferable stance. But to see her sitting there in relative comfort and content with her station was another aspect that was kind of offensive for the French viewers who went to the gallery and saw this painting. They wanted condemnation. They wanted judgment. They wanted her to suffer. And here we almost get the feeling that she's in this profession by choice, not by necessity. Another aspect to the painting that upholds this, or that further supports this reading, is the woman that's standing behind her. She has a maid. there's someone there supporting her her lifestyle. In fact, is bringing somebody has sent her flowers, a beautiful bouquet of flowers, and the maid is delivering them, presenting them in this very refined way, which again was a little bit higher than what people expected her station to be. And it also prompted the question among viewers, who is sending Olympia flowers? Who is keeping Olympia in business? Who's giving her these beautiful jewels? Who's buying her this beautiful jewelry? Who bought her the beautiful shawl? There are two answers, both of which were pretty unpopular. First of all, maybe Olympia bought them for herself, but maybe it was somebody's husband, right? And even today we hear about the lively culture of mistresses that French men enjoy. And that was certainly true in the 19th century, that a lot of French men had a wife and they also had a mistress. And probably the flowers in this painting were sent by a man that was probably already married. So again, the painting kind of unearthed this level of society that people preferred to keep quiet, people preferred to keep buried, that people didn't want to have exposed and displayed in a downtown salon or gallery. So for these reasons, the painting was really quite controversial and upset a lot of people. Likewise, you know, it was, like I said, other groups championed the work, championed her expression, her confidence, her the fact that she is owning who she is and what she is, and not shying away from it. That is the gist of this painting, and it's like I said, it's a it's a masterpiece. It's a great example of French artists thinking about the proletariat, being influenced by Marx's idea of exposing reality and focusing on how life really is, opposed to just buttressing the upper classes and the bourgeoisie. It also shows us, like I said, it's a little bit of a departure from Courbet's Stonebreakers. We're not having a pity party over this, over Olympia. We're kind of, she's been put almost on equal terms with us in some way, which is quite a phenomenal and radical departure for 1863, which is when it was painted and displayed. What are some other things I can mention about it? Well, I guess maybe I'll sort of use the work as a segue into mentioning another femme fatale, another kind of scary woman, or fatal woman that was that gained notoriety during this time, and that was Salome. Salome, I think we're going to have a presentation also on Friday about Salome, but I'll just quickly say that she was she's a biblical subject. She's described in the Old Testament, and she's a princess, very quickly a princess who is invited to do a dance in for the king in a court, and does such an amazing job that she's granted any wish she wants. And the wish that she chooses is that she wants to have the head of John John the Baptist. Now I just thought of an interesting turn of events. John the Baptist is a New Testament. Am I getting my stories mixed up? Why would she want to have the head of John the Baptist if, I'll have to rethink this. Maybe I'm misremembering. Anyways, she desires to have somebody's head on a platter, and her wish is granted, and the person is decapitated, and so this is obviously a story of a another femme fatale, another lady killer, creepy, disturbing. This isn't a woman of high moral values like other parts of society would champion. Rather, it's kind of a frightening figure. And so we will look at a couple of examples on Friday, in addition to hearing a presentation about Salome from one of our classmates. But in the meantime, I want to ask you to, if you haven't finished reading the Baudelaire text, please do that. And I'd like to invite you to watch the about half of a film of a play that is based on the Oscar Wilde play of Salome, which came out during our time period. I think it came out, was first produced in 1891. Now the film on YouTube, there is a link in your course link. You have to, it doesn't, at least on my laptop, it doesn't immediately open up the link, but I have to cut and paste it. In any case, it is prompted to about halfway through the film, so you don't have to watch the full hour and a half. I think you just end up watching the last 45 minutes just to see. So the production is now from 1923, but it's, like I said, it's based on the original from 1890 by Oscar Wilde, just to see how this story or this subject was interpreted. It is a silent film. There's some really funky music that's I'm thinking is not original, but it's evocative nonetheless. And we see this play from around our time, and an interpretation of Salome, the biblical princess, who, like I said, we will expand upon on Friday. So that's your homework. I will see you hopefully in person on campus on Friday. Have a great day. Bye-bye.